What if the cup of coffee you believed was keeping you alive instead pushed you closer to the hospital bed? Recalls have already spread across 48 states, exposing chemicals, mildew, pesticides, and even deadly germs in brands that millions of people continue to drink every morning. Seniors on fixed incomes and working families struggling to make ends meet are disproportionately affected. How many more pacemakers will fail following a powerful brew? How many more kidneys will fail under the weight of hidden heavy metals? Every year, the CDC records about 128,000 hospitalizations caused by foodborne toxins in the United States, with older persons accounting for the majority of them. What happens next if recalls have already stretched from coast to coast? This is the Downturn Report, and the truth becomes personal. Today, we reveal the alarming reality behind 7 coffees that you should quit drinking right now. Number 1. Starbucks. When you walk into a Starbucks, you are doing more than just buying coffee. You're purchasing a sliver of certainty in a world that never stops changing. The paper cup feels like protection against the pandemonium. The green siren on the logo says, "You're safe here." For numerous older Americans juggling medications, pensions, and price tags, the promise of constancy is invaluable. What if the very promise is the trap? What if the morning comfort they drink is actually a slow-acting betrayal, degrading health and depleting wallets? How many more lies will we swallow in naive trust before we realize the cup in our hands may be filled with danger rather than relief? The evidence had already surfaced years ago. A California court found that Starbucks coffee contains acrylamide, an industrial chemical waste, at levels up to 4 times greater than state safety standards. Acrylamide is not a harmless speck. It has been linked to cancer and neurological diseases. Nonetheless, no warning labels appeared on the mugs. The corporation relied on loopholes, remaining silent as clients inadvertently ingested poisons in their breakfast muffins. Isn't that like selling umbrellas that leak when it rains? The betrayal is especially painful for elderly, whose bodies can't handle chemicals as efficiently, making every latte a risk to their health. However, chemicals are only the first layer in this harsh roast. Starbucks marketing depicts green landscapes and smiling farmers. However, reports from Brazil, Ethiopia, and Guatemala suggest something far darker. Child laborers hunched over in 100 degrees heat, handling pesticides that were already prohibited in Europe years ago. Internal emails eventually revealed that executives had been notified, but instead of acting, they ignored the warning. The company's boasts about ethical sourcing sound hollow, and one can't help but ask if we're paying for fair trade or simply funding exploitation disguised with beautiful Italian drink names. Even their so-called breakthroughs have gone awry. The widely promoted Olato olive oil-infused brand claimed heart-healthy benefits, but within 6 months of its launch, more than 370 reports of nausea, diarrhea, and stomach cramps arrived. Baristas joked that it was a colon cleansing in disguise. But customers, many of them older and on drugs, weren't laughing from their hospital beds. And still, no recall, no apology, just a discreet shift of the menu boards, as if concealing evidence beneath the froth. Is this what progress tastes like? Sickness was passed off as sophisticated. Their syrups are not any nicer. In 2024, new toxicity evaluations identified sucralose, the sweetener found in those sugar-free pumps, as interfering with insulin sensitivity and gut microbes. Lab testing on their matcha found that it had been bulked out with cornstarch and food coloring, increasing revenues while reducing confidence. Even almond milk lattes pose hazards, with consumer reports indicating oxalates levels high enough to exacerbate kidney problems. Each concealed hazard adds to the previous one, until the cup contains less comfort and more chemical roulette. And still, millions continue to line up, repeating to themselves, "Just one more won't hurt." Isn't this the cruelest trick of all? That resignation is precisely what corporations rely on. Looking into the future, the picture becomes much grim. Recalls have already affected 48 states. But what if the next controversy discloses even more deadly truths, pesticide residues, unreported chemicals, or hidden adverse effects that authorities discreetly ignored? Will Starbucks continue to deny the facts until the lawsuits outnumber their Christmas cups? Or will a tipping point occur when buyers see through the branding to the rot beneath? These inquiries are important because the longer we sip in silence, the deeper the betrayal gets. There are alternatives, despite the fact that the system would have you believe there are none. Local roasters, such as Counterculture Coffee, publish pesticide tests and proudly display the origin of their beans. Dean's Beans condemns child labor and supports it with fair trade certification. Even brewing at home with a modest machine can provide greater safety, lower costs, and genuine peace of mind. When money is tight, making the right choice is difficult. But the most difficult question is this: why are working Americans put into a situation where safety costs more while treachery is cheap on every corner? Starbucks may still give you a cup with your name on it, but it may now simply be known as deception. Number 2. Dunkin' Donuts. Walk into a Dunkin' Donuts before daybreak and it feels like America's comfort food in liquid form. The orange and pink sign promises quickness, affordability, and a little boost to get through another long day. For many elderly people on Social Security, a hot cup for $1.79 is the sole modest extravagance that still fits the budget. But what if the same cup, cheap, familiar, and dependable, contained poisons, mildew, and even lead? How many retirees, shift workers, and grandparents are unintentionally sipping their way into hospital wards while the brand smiles and proclaims, "America runs on Dunkin'"? The numbers are not small. In late 2024, Food Integrity Watch reported that 160 Dunkin' Donuts locations in 13 states were storing pre-ground coffee in moist, mold-prone closets, some of which had been sitting for weeks. Laboratory tests revealed ochratoxin A fungus toxin linked to kidney failure and memory loss. Seniors who already had high blood pressure or early dementia drank this on a daily basis. The FDA visited 47 stores, issued quiet corrective actions, and never informed the public. How many cups does it take before the kidneys start to scar? How many mornings did families drink poison, thinking it was harmless comfort? There is also the issue of cutting corners. A whistleblower in Queens caught employees reusing filters up to 8 times and blending stale coffee into fresh drinks. The video became viral, but corporate labeled it isolated. However, leaked supplier audits revealed that 23 other locations failed cleanliness standards during the same quarter. One Florida location even had cockroach droppings near the grinder. Still no shutdown. If this was your home kitchen, wouldn't you toss everything away? Why does a billion-dollar chain allow to ignore roaches and reuse filters while customers bear the consequences? The water provides a nasty twist. The Consumer Environmental Health Alliance tested Dunkin' Donuts brewers in 6 locations, and 3 of them, including Milwaukee and St. Louis, had lead levels higher than 5 parts per billion. Lead, the poison we've spent decades attempting to eliminate from paint and pipes, is served hot in a paper cup. Seniors, the demographic most vulnerable to neurological degeneration, may be quietly sipping lead-laced coffee every morning. How many strokes? How many memory lapses can be attributed to a corporation's decision to save money on water filters rather than age? People continue to drink because the alternative feels worse. At 5 a.m., choices are limited. According to a recent survey, 41% of low-income Americans over 60 choose Dunkin' Donuts primarily for its affordable prices. They understand that Starbucks is out of reach, and local roasters do not open before morning. So they risk with their health, telling themselves that one more cup will not matter. However, the numbers imply otherwise. Millions of people are affected by chronic low-level lead exposure, and mold toxins cause thousands of kidney-related hospital admissions each year. Looking ahead, the irony deepens. Dunkin' Donuts has announced intentions to expand into hospital cafes and elder institutions by 2026 as part of its community care program. Imagine the same coffee that has already been linked to mold and lead being sold inside medical institutions to people with the most frail kidneys and brains. Will ER visits increase if elders accidentally drink hazardous brew in the very buildings designed to heal them? Or will regulators finally grow a spine and impose stringent water filtration and freshness standards across franchises? Both scenarios are plausible, and neither provides comfort. It does not have to be this way. Joe Coffee in New York analyzes beans 3 times for mycotoxins. Verve Coffee Roasters invests in rigorous freshness and employee welfare. Café Mam sources pesticide-free beans and supports indigenous farmers. Even a cheap French press at home with clean water can be more beneficial to your health than a cup of sludge from the value menu. But the more serious fact is this: Dunkin' Donuts has educated us to accept filth disguised as familiarity. So, which is more frightening, the mold and lead in the cup, or the fact that we've become numb enough to keep drinking? Anyway, number 3 is McDonald's, ***. For some, the dollar and change McCafe cup feels like the final deal in America. Seniors with fixed means trudge inside McDonald's at morning, clutching coins or wrinkled notes, and depart with what appears to be a small comfort in a paper cup. It's quick, inexpensive, and dependable. Or so it appears. However, peeling back the golden arches causes the brightness to dissipate swiftly. What's being poured into those styrofoam cups isn't simply coffee. Regulators continue to tread carefully through a trickling drip of chemical deception, machine filth, and transnational shortcuts. How many retirees have taken pride in saving money, only to discover that their wise investment may have resulted in hospitalization? Start with the beans. McDonald's promises 100% Arabica. However, the European Food Watch Consortium discovered shipments from Vietnamese and Colombian vendors where ammonia washing was common practice. Consider beans so stale that they require a chemical spray tan to appear fresh. Whistleblowers even joked that it was cosmetics for rotting beans. These industrial recovery tactics do more than just hide rot. They also leave residues, and seniors who drink on a daily basis bear the brunt of the consequences. Shouldn't truth in advertising encompass more than just photoshopped coffee beans? Worse, harmful traces keep appearing. In 2023, the Global Chemical Risk Network tested McDonald's coffee and discovered chlorpyrifos, a pesticide banned in Europe because to its link to nerve damage and memory loss. 3 out of 5 samples contained residues. Legal in the United States? Technically. Is it safe for clients over the age of 60 who already have more fragile brains? Absolutely not. According to McDonald's own demographic studies, the majority of McCafe drinkers are above the age of 55. How bizarre that the group most at risk is the one most targeted. Even if the beans were immaculate, the machines reveal a different horror. A class action complaint cited more than 220 shops across 12 states. Thousands of customers may have consumed bacteria-laced coffee without being told. For an elderly customer with a weaker immune system, this isn't a major inconvenience. This is a blatant threat. Why clean the machinery if profit per minute is the only thing that matters? Then comes the water. Many McDonald's businesses connect brewers to ordinary city pipes rather than filtered lines. Lead pipes are still in use in elderly towns throughout the Midwest and South. In Flint, Michigan, a consumer-led test in 2022 discovered McDonald's coffee had lead levels of 8.3 parts per billion, 5 times higher than Starbucks or Panera in the same neighborhood. Lead does not simply taste metallic. It has an adverse effect on memory, blood pressure, and overall health. How many seniors have previously attributed their mental fog to old age, despite the fact that their morning cup may be quietly poisoning them? And the future does not look any brighter. McDonald's has announced a 2025 agreement with FNC Trading to reduce coffee costs by 12% worldwide. Is there a catch? FNC is notorious for importing parchment-defective beans from Honduras and Sumatra, low-grade imports that no European watchdog would ever tolerate. What does cheaper beans mean? More bleach baths, hidden pesticides, and hushed-up complaints? Will the FDA ever demand complete disclosure regarding sources and cleaning processes? Or will another whistleblower have to jeopardize their position to alert the public? The next scandal is not if, but when. You don't have to accept sludge disguised as savings. Better Buzz Coffee in California checks their water every week. Kicking Horse Coffee in Canada completely rejects chlorpyrifos and keeps its supply fair trade certified. Even Layered Superfood Coffee contains beans that have been pre-tested for contaminants and are combined with prebiotic fiber, making it a safer option for aging digestion. Corporations would have you believe otherwise, but there are options. And yet, millions of people will queue up tomorrow for a $1 refill, saying, it's just coffee. But is it? Or is it a chemical compromise created in a dirty machine and dumped into the hands of those who deserve better? What does it say about us if this is how we treat the generation who constructed the highways, reared families, and fought in wars? What do you think McDonald's will trim next to save 12%? Number 4, Death Wish Coffee. The name was intended to convey edgy marketing, but it now sounds like prophecy. The world's strongest coffee promised unadulterated energy, a beverage so potent that it could propel trucks over midnight freeways and retirees through sleepless evenings. People felt they were getting strength for less than $3 per can. Instead, many people were inadvertently wagering with one of the world's worst chemicals. In 2017, the FDA ordered a countrywide recall of Death Wish Nitro Cold Brew after tests revealed the possibility of botulinum toxin contamination. That's not a fancy lab chemical. It's the same paralyzing toxin used in biological warfare, capable of shutting out lungs within hours. Thousands of cans had already been sold before the alarm was triggered. How many elderly Americans pursued alertness but instead ingested paralysis in a fancy can? Botulism flourishes in low-acid, oxygen-free containers, which are exactly what Death Wish created when it canned its nitro beverages. The FDA later determined that the company failed to follow a vital sterilizing procedure that is widely acknowledged in the industry. In plain English, they risked their lives to cut costs. Experts deemed the epidemic risk significant. For younger adults, the bet proved risky. For seniors with weaker immunity and slower recuperation, it was essentially a death sentence waiting to happen. How many grandparents opened a can to remain awake for bingo night, not realizing they were drinking a biological weapon? But, even beyond botulism, the caffeine levels are concerning. Some Death Wish servings contain more than 470 milligrams, nearly 5 times the strength of a Red Bull. In 2023, watchdog groups reported at least 112 ER visits related to extreme coffees, with Death Wish topping the list. A Florida retiree fainted in the middle of a community hall meeting after her pacemaker failed to withstand the surge. The story garnered local headlines, then vanished. How many comparable incidents go unnoticed, dismissed as the result of aging rather than business recklessness? For a brand that boasts about pushing boundaries, isn't this evidence that they're driving their clients into hospital beds? The irony is awful. Death Wish promotes revolt, but it actually offers tiredness wrapped in risk. Its faithful base consists of the most vulnerable, night shift workers, long-distance drivers, and elderly Americans who are forced to keep working under a system that does not allow for rest. The corporation claims it has established safety standards, but the future is uncertain. As long as their selling point is to be the strongest, the border between energy and overdose will remain blurred. Will the upcoming recall result in another sterilizing failure? Will the next scandal involve a confirmed caffeine-related death? In any case, the question is when rather than if. Customers deserve strength without poison. Biohazard coffee contains strong caffeine levels, but each batch is subjected to independent microbial testing. 4-Sigmatic combines coffee and mushrooms to reduce spikes and protect the immune system, perfect for senior consumers. Alternatively, ground organic equal exchange beans at home and brew bold without rolling the dice. The debate is no more whether Death Wish is edgy, but if customers should continue to pose as crash test dummies for its marketing experiment. What's more rebellious, investing in a skull-branded gamble or prioritizing health above hype before the next catastrophe strikes? Number 5. Folgers Coffee. For decades, Folgers marketed more than just coffee. It marketed an emotion. The crimson tub on the shelf promised habit, nostalgia, and the charming jingle about how their brew makes mornings brighter. Folgers appeared like safety in a can for seniors and working-class families on a tight budget, cheap, familiar, and always available at Walmart or the local grocery store. However, comfort has a bitter aftertaste when it covers danger. The sweet commercials featuring happy grandparents pouring drinks for their grandchildren conceal a harsher truth. Folgers has been regularly identified for dangerous heavy metals, mold toxins, and chemical residues that would never pass through European customs. The insult burns the sharpest because the brand knows exactly who it is targeting: elders and low-income households who are least able to fight back or afford alternatives. The figures are chilling. A 2021 Clean Label Project analysis of 147 coffee items found Folgers to be among the worst, with measurable quantities of lead and cadmium. A single cup produced from their classic roast contained cadmium levels close to California's Proposition 65 daily safety limit. Cadmium has been related to brittle bones and kidney deterioration, 2 diseases that millions of older Americans already face. Consumer Reports also confirmed the presence of significant levels of lead in Folgers instant coffee, the same poison banned from gasoline decades ago for diminishing children's brains. Consider how it might weave its way gradually into the everyday routines of seniors whose memory is already deteriorating. How many cases of just getting old are the silent consequence of a seemingly harmless brand? The mold issue is no less alarming. Aflatoxin and ochratoxin, a fungal poisons linked to cancer, were found in several Folgers products during 2022 inspections. These poisons thrive when beans are stored in wet silos, which are common in tropical areas where Folgers sources cheap bulk harvests. Shipments containing those toxins are intercepted and destroyed in Europe. In America, they are ground, sealed, and sold in a cheerful red jar for $7.99. Is there any clearer message than the fact that U.S. elders are treated as second-class citizens in comparison to European shoppers? Even decaf is poisoned by irony. To remove caffeine, Folgers uses methylene chloride, an EPA-designated probable carcinogen. While permitted in the United States, traces have been identified in the finished product. So the retiree who chooses decaf to protect his or her weak heart may be taking on a different type of risk. Isn't that like replacing aspirin with arsenic? Folgers' option is not safe. It's a new dilemma with the promise of relief. In 2023, the CDC reported over 128,000 hospitalizations due to foodborne toxins in the United States, with seniors being the hardest hit. Coffee isn't the only culprit, but doctors warn that tainted beans are an underappreciated contributor to kidney and liver damage. Meanwhile, J.M. Smucker, Folgers' parent business, spends millions of dollars on commercials featuring retirees enjoying quiet mornings. Those same retirees may be silently paying the price in doctor bills and hospital stays. The future appears even gloomy. Climate change is pressuring soils in supply countries, causing beans to absorb more heavy metals and become more susceptible to mold. Folgers' reliance on low-cost bulk beans makes it particularly vulnerable. Will cadmium levels rise much higher in the following harvest? Will aflatoxin levels rise until lawsuits force the truth on a label? Or will authorities continue to ignore elders as they pour another cup? For a brand built on memories, the road ahead smells like betrayal rather than breakfast. There are safer options. Mount Hagen Organic Instant Coffee, imported from Germany, fulfills high EU requirements and is USDA organic certified. Purity Coffee in the United States conducts third-party tests on each batch for mold, metals, and pesticides, and has gained a following among doctors and sportsmen. For budget-conscious buyers, Don Francisco's organic beans at Costco provide cleaner sourcing for a modest premium. Compared to the long-term medical expenditures Folgers may incur, such solutions could be a great bargain. So, the question remains, how many more times will Americans spoon Folgers into the filter before they realize the link between what's in the cup and what's happening to their bodies? Is this actually coffee? Or has Folgers become the most affordable delivery mechanism for poisons lying in plain sight? And when the illusion finally breaks, would anyone at Smucker's admit that what they offered was never comfort, but rather betrayal disguised as a jingle? Number 6. Black Rifle Coffee. Few coffee companies have been as patriotic as Black Rifle Coffee. With advertising adorned with flags, weapons, and freedom slogans, it persuaded working-class Americans, particularly veterans and older men, that every sip was a sign of dedication. However, beneath the guise of branding comes a frightening mix of poisonous leftovers, misleading promises, and political entanglements. Many retirees who thought they were supporting honesty and service were actually offered treachery in a bag. Global Clean Foods conducted lab testing in 2023 and discovered residues of paraquat and glyphosate in beans associated with Black Rifle bulk lines. Paraquat is so toxic that even low-level exposure has been linked to Parkinson's disease, which is already a serious threat to millions of elderly people. Meanwhile, billions of dollars in cancer cases have been filed over glyphosate. In Europe, beans containing these remnants would be seized at customs. In the United States, they were roasted, bagged, and proudly marketed with the Black Rifle insignia. There are no recalls or warnings, simply nationalistic packaging disguising global shortcuts. How many elderly Americans poured their morning cup without realizing they were ingesting substances that could harm their health? The politics just exacerbated the discomfort. Investigations by ProPublica and The Intercept revealed that money were funneled through political groups and then tied to extremist agendas. Internal memos characterized the backlash as a brand amplifier. Outrage was not an accident. It was part of the business plan. For retirees who believed their money was helping veterans, seeing that it may have fostered division is like being drafted into a war they never agreed to fight. The deceptions do not stop there. In 2024, a class action lawsuit in Texas accused Black Rifle of selling some roasts as single origin, despite internal records revealing blends from at least 3 countries, including plantations linked to forced migrant labor. 4 customers raised on honesty and hard work, being duped by a firm cloaked in patriotism is the cruelest form of deception. Health concerns exist as well. A VA-affiliated poll in 2023 found that over 19% of veterans reported unpleasant reactions, insomnia, palpitations, severe acid reflux, after drinking Silencer's smooth and cold brew blends, which each contain more than 300 milligrams of caffeine per cup. In 1 year, ER physicians in Kentucky and Oklahoma reported 22 cases in which Black Rifle was used prior to tachycardia episodes. This is not an unusual adverse effect for seniors taking heart medication. It is a direct ticket to the hospital. The future looks more darker. Climate change is driving higher pesticide use in Latin America, which is expected to increase by 35% by 2030. If Black Rifle continues to seek the lowest cost suppliers, chemical residues will rise. At the same time, its divisive branding risks alienating mainstream retailers, potentially driving even more cost-cutting at the farm level. Which controversy occurs first? A recall following paraquat spikes? Or a boycott if politics backfires? In any case, average Americans will bear the brunt of the consequences. There are better paths. Veteran-owned coffee roasters in North Carolina acquire pesticide-free beans and make transparent donations to rehabilitation programs. Lavazza's Tierra brand features Rainforest Alliance-certified beans that have been extensively tested for contaminants. Alternatively, go simple and buy from Cooperative Coffees, a farmer-owned cooperative, and brew at home with a pour-over kit. The real question is whether Americans will continue to allow firms to flaunt flags while selling polluted goods. Are we recognizing service or being manipulated as puppets in a branding war? When your morning coffee conceals poison and betrayal, ask yourself, what else are we blindly drinking? Subscribe today. Stay awake. Thank you for sticking with us until the very end. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to ensure you don't miss any of our daily updates. Now, feel free to watch some of our most recent and popular videos, which will appear on your screen. Goodbye, and see you at the next one.